Hello everyone, and allow me to welcome you back to yet another entry of Hitbox Analysis. Today our specimen is another reptile, this time hailing from the Crocodile Isle. It's King K.Rool, another one of the most wanted newcomers before Ultimate was announced. It's of course always nice to see more antagonists in Smash, so his inclusion was pretty solid in my reckoning. But how does this cruel crocodile stack up in terms of hitboxes? Why don't we investigate the matter further? This video was decided by a character vote on my Patreon. If you want to vote on what characters I should cover in the future, and be a part of the creation process of future videos, that is the place to be. As usual, the visuals were made by Zeckemyro. There are links to everything in the description. Before we get into the hitboxes, we should talk about K.Rool's belly armor, which is a unique mechanic specific to him. Now, I did go over this in the video I made about attack resistances a little while ago, but I'll mention it here for the sake of being thorough. During specific frames of certain attacks, K.Rool has partial super armor on his stomach. This armor uses an HP system with a total of 18 HP. Whenever K.Rool armors an attack like this, the damage is split 50-50 between the armor and K.Rool. Because of this, the armor effectively does have 36 HP. The damage is cumulative, though it does recover HP back at a rate of about 1 HP per 4 seconds. Should the HP reach 0, the armor is broken and it basically acts like a shield break, where K.Rool is stunned for a long period of time. The moves that have this armor use a unique detection area for it, which you'll be able to see in the visuals for the moves that utilize it, with it being the big yellow area you can see here. Anyways though, let's get on with the hitboxes. Honestly, K.Rool's jab is kind of unimpressive. I mean, I know it's par for the course at this point as far as jabs go, but with him being a bigger character and all, I kind of expected them to go maybe a little harder on his jabs, but I guess not, seeing how the hitboxes cover only exactly his hand and not much more. The second hit is a bit bigger, though not by too much, while the final hitbox is a kick with an actually quite respectable hitbox that launches away. Not too much to say about it, it's a jab that does jab things. For F-tilt, we actually have a rare case of the angleable F-tilt that actually has different hitboxes. Granted, they're not too different, but we'll take what we can get. The normal angle has 2 hitboxes. The bigger one farthest away is the sweet spot dealing 13%, while the one closer is weaker and deals 11. This is the same for the other angles as well. However, like I said, the actual hitboxes are slightly different. Like the down angle, for example, has more overlap between the hitboxes, and also the sour spot is a different shape than before. Up angle also has this other hitbox shape as well. Like I said, it's not too significant, but they are at least slightly different. As you can see, this is our first case of the partial super armor. It's worth mentioning that the armor detection area is a little bit bigger than his usual hurtbox, meaning that it can lead to situations where you are out of reach and still get hit by a move, because of how it extends a little bit. Though I would definitely say that the upside is worth it overall. On F-tilt, the armor is active from frame 5 to 11, regardless of the angle. K.Rool's down tilt is a bit of a weird move. It's a stomp on the ground consisting of 3 hitboxes, and it's certainly a unique arrangement of hitboxes. The huge white hitbox is the weakest and launches up. Needless to say, it has a ton of range, both vertically and horizontally. The 2 other hitboxes, however, are also a bit strange. The purple one will bury you, and as a result can only hit grounded opponents. The other red overlapping hitbox, however, only hits aerial opponents. The aerial only hitbox actually deals quite a bit more damage than the bury, which is interesting. Though I guess it is to compensate for you not getting to bury, which can lead to more damage. Next up is up tilt, which is a surprisingly fast move, coming out on frame 5 being just a single frame slower than its jab. The move only has 2 hitboxes placed along his arm. On the first few frames of the move, the hitboxes deal the same damage and knockback. However, after that, the move takes on a more traditional damage output, with the outer hitbox being stronger and the inner being weaker. The odd thing about it though is that the sweet spot deals 8.2% and the sour spot deals 6.8%. No idea why they chose those specific values, it's a bit unusual. His arm is also partially intangible during the early active frames of the move, which is a nice bonus, though it's not too significant. K.Rool's dash attack is a fairly simple move, consisting only of a single hitbox. It starts out being a bit larger, but gets smaller and weaker about halfway into the move. The move also uses armor lasting from frame 7 to 28, being one of the moves with the longest duration. The move is fairly powerful early on and covers a lot of distance. It also does have an additional shield stun multiplier of 1.15, which I suppose is worth mentioning. Though again, this is only during the sweet spot part of the move. It's a solid attack, and the armor really makes it hard to challenge. As for aerials, neutral air is one of the simpler ones out there. It only has a single hitbox, lingering for quite a while around K.Rool's stomach. The move, as you probably know, has armor lasting from frame 6 to 30, being another really huge window. The first 2 frames of the move are the sweet spot, being slightly bigger and dealing more damage, while the later hits are a bit weaker, though have a lot more combo potential. Due to K.Rool's hurtbox shifting during this move, the partial armor can be very hard to avoid, since it basically covers his entire lower body at this point, making the move really good for landing and reversing at his advantage state. K.Rool's forward air is not a punch or arm move, but instead a kick. It's a pretty wonky move as far as hitboxes go. It has 2 hitboxes, one closer to K.Rool, and one out on his feet. The two hitboxes move around with the move and last for a deceptively long time. The red hitbox is the strongest while the purple is a bit weaker. However, on the last 3 frames of the move they both do get weaker. Continuing with the contrarian moveset K.Rool seems to be going for here, we have back air, which is a punch behind K.Rool. It's got 3 hitboxes with a few distinctions. The move is a spike, certainly making it one of the more odd spikes out there. The 2 hitboxes on his fists are the sweet spots, dealing 19.5%. However, one is grounded only and the other one is aerial only, making the move only capable of spiking aerial opponents, seeing how the grounded one only launches away. The hitbox closer to K.Rool is a sour spot, dealing a bit less damage and knockback, as well as not spiking. The move might be a little slow and hard to position sometimes, but the amount of coverage over the 3 active frames is very nice, making it a solid option for any offstage opponent. For one of the stranger moves in the game, we have up air. It starts out covering K.Rool's head and upper body, but after a while it turns into a sour spot, being notably weaker. As you can see, the move has partial armor, which might seem a little bit weird on an up air, since presumably your opponent will be above you, making it very hard to actually hit the armor area, with any move that will not just actually hit the hurt box instead. However, in combination with partial head intangibility, it does make it a lot harder to challenge, seeing how any overlap with the armor area and the hurt box area will trigger the armor instead. It lasts from frame 6 to 20, which is pretty nice. In addition, the active frames on this move is pretty nuts. It lasts a really long time and the sweet spot is active for a majority of it. But it does seem like this great move was just kind of not meant to be, because they decided to give it what I can only imagine is the most amount of lag on any aerial in the entire game. The move actually has so much lag that before the game released, people thought that this move would just straight up put you into freefall. That's how bad it is. Besides that, it's a really solid move, but man, that Achilles heel is not something you can work around that easily. With down air, it seems that K.Rool also joins the double leg stomp spike club that Falcon, Ganon, and Dr. Mario reside in, and the hitboxes themselves certainly do justify the membership. It has 2 hitboxes, both of which spike on the first 2 frames of the move. The move has armor on frame 14 to 25, being one of the slower windows. Aside from that, it's a pretty normal down air, but it gets the job done. Moving on to his special moves. Now, all of K.Rool's specials are a bit weird, since a lot of them use other models that can't be loaded at the same time, and no better way to exemplify that but with up B, which is just the propeller pack and the hitboxes it has. So, yeah, you're gonna have to use your imagination a bit for this one. The hitbox spins around with the propeller, and it does reach quite a bit up above, making the move very disjointed. Even though you can't really see K.Rool for scale, I am sure most people have enough experience with this move to understand how hard it is to challenge. It's a very good recovery move, and the hitboxes do a good job of protecting K.Rool while going up. Had it not been this disjointed, I think K.Rool would have a much harder time offstage. K.Rool side B is a projectile, which also means it can't be visualized traditionally. The actual throw animation has a brief wind box for a moment before the crown is actually thrown, which was certainly news to me, can't say I've ever really noticed that before. It just pushes you slightly back and makes sure the crown connects. The crown visual looks like this. It covers the crown and quite a bit more. It's the strongest while traveling forward, and on the return it's a bit weaker. If you don't catch the crown on the return, it'll fall to the ground and become an item that can be thrown. Should it fall off stage, it will respawn around K.Rool not too long afterwards. It's one of those weird item mechanics they just put on characters like K.Rool and Belmonts that honestly just results in more frustration than anything else. At least this one can't be picked up before the move is actually over, unlike a certain other move. His down B is a good old counter, though it actually does work a bit different than most others. The counter trigger area looks like this, and only covers in front of K.Rool, so if you hit K.Rool from behind it will not trigger and he gets hit like usual, though he is actually completely intangible on frame 4 to 15, meaning you can still ignore attacks on occasion. If you connect the counter, the hitbox looks like this. It's pretty huge, as is the trend with counter hitboxes. The counter can also reflect projectiles, which gives it a bit more utility than most others, somewhat making up for the restrictive nature of the trigger hitbox. The damage multiplier on the counter is 1.5 damage. However, the outer hitbox does deal a little bit less knockback. The same is true for the projectile reflection, being a 1.5 damage multiplier, which is pretty nice. For neutral B, K.Rool uses the blunderbuss, which is undoubtedly one of my favorite names for a weapon ever made. The move just consists of a cannonball being shot out in front of K.Rool. The hitbox for the projectile looks like this, being pretty much exactly the scale of the model. After shooting the ball, the gun turns into a sort of inhaling move, in which opponents can be pulled into the gun and be shot away. Like the other inhales, it ignores shields and has a pretty strong wind box dragging inwards. Alternatively, should you inhale the cannonball, you can shoot it again at a different angle. The hitbox for hitting the cannonball is actually a bit different than the one used for fighters, looking like this, reaching a bit further horizontally but having less vertical reach. It's a flexible and versatile move, and definitely something that K.Rool gets a lot of use out of. Lastly, as usual, we have smash attacks. And as is tradition with heavyweights, it's certainly not going to disappoint. Starting off with up smash, which is just a really bizarre move, accompanied by an equally bizarre arrangement of hitboxes. On the first active frames of the move, K.Rool does a headbutt into the air. On these frames he has a hitbox around his head, which is the strongest part of the move. On top of that, his head is also intangible. After these frames, the hitbox becomes notably weaker and a bit smaller for a few frames. Again after this, he has a single hitbox around his head that follows him as he does a dive towards the ground. After this frame, however, the move only deals 3% damage, and actually has a spike on it for a single frame, followed by the same hitbox except with a different angle. Finally, on the last active frame of the move, it has 2 hitboxes on the ground. The smaller one hits both grounded and aerial opponents, while the bigger one only hits grounded opponents, presumably to prevent it from hitting people trying to recover off stage or something. And as you can see, the move has armor on frame 6 to 19. This move is so weird, man. Like, both in the way it's trying to be and how it's programmed. They even added a wacky sound effect in there just for good measure. For a bit of complexity whiplash, we have F Smash, which is just a simple move consisting of 2 hitboxes. The red one is a sweet spot dealing 19%, while the purple is a sour spot, being a bit weaker, only dealing 16.5. The move can be angled up or down, giving it a bit more versatility than the average smash attack, though the hitboxes remain the same. The damage, however, does actually change in really weird ways. The up angle instead deals 19.95%, while the sour spot deals 17.325%, which are some oddly specific percentages. The down version is the same story, with the sweet spot dealing 19.57%, and the sour spot dealing 16.995%. Again, just very strange how specific some of these damage values are. So yeah, the up version is technically the strongest, while the regular version is actually the weakest. Go figure, huh? And finally, for what is essentially a repeat of Ridley's down smash from last time, we have, well, down smash. It really is in essence the exact same move. K.Rool jumps into the air and crashes back down. And to reuse the script from last time, this is also another great example of some not so deceptive hurtbox shifting, especially considering how fast K.Rool leaves the ground and enters the air. When coming back down, he has a single hitbox, which is the sweet spot part of the move, dealing by far the most amount of damage. After these 2 frames, there are 2 frames where a massive shockwave is triggered, being a huge hitbox that covers all of K.Rool, some of the air, and a lot of the air in front of him. The hitbox, however, is not nearly as powerful, but is certainly nice to have since it does grant you a safety net, should you miss the sweet spot. The move has armor, which lasts from frame 8 to 21. Either way, that was all the hitboxes K.Rool had to offer. It seems we have been on a bit of a streak when it comes to big characters as of late. Not that I complain, they usually tend to have quite interesting hitboxes. K.Rool is another example of a character that is really not held back by the hitboxes themselves, but his slow movement, big hurtbox, and exploitable disadvantage state is not something that can be so easily undermined by just having good hitboxes. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed today's hitbox video. As mentioned, there's a new poll for the next character I will cover on the Patreon right now, so should that be of interest, that is the place to go. And of course, thanks to everyone who has been supporting me there. I greatly appreciate it. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.